Hello, welcome everyone to the panel. So I want to start with hand raise from the audience. So I want to know who here has changed roles in the last 2 years. Maybe changed to a different company, changed maybe a promotion, maybe the scope of the role changed. So a lot of people, that's interesting. So today we want to focus on how the role of product teams, UX, product managers, and other roles have evolved over the last 2 years. And basically we have seen that many companies have faced struggles. There were budget constraints, there were layoffs, they were looking for efficiencies. And on top of that, some of the roles have been challenged, like for example, agile roles and research and product management itself. So we want to explore those changes a bit more with this beautiful panel. So Arne, I would like to start with you. And the intention is to start by framing this change. So you have been seeing, for example, you have seen the evolution of the role there. You have been later as Facelift. So how have you seen the role change in these last 2 years?
Yeah, I think the most important change that I've seen is the shift from growth to profit and what that means for the product teams, because now, it's not so important anymore that we build everything scalable right from the beginning, and then it's also not justifiable that we put so much effort in making everything scalable. Sometimes, some things we still need to get the foundations right, but it's much, much more important that we really get into a regular mode of delivering value. And I think it also means we had to establish different ways of working with the rest of the organization, with the go-to-market team. So I saw the importance to really get out of our product silo and start engaging with customer success, start engaging with the sales team to enable them. And I think all of that was not so important 3 or 4 years ago, where we could easily hide and say, yeah, we built our thing and trust us, it's going to be good.
Interesting. Maybe to have a different perspective, Kristen, what have you seen in N26? Maybe has the role evolved or has stayed more or less the same?
Yeah, I think the role definitely has evolved in our world. I think we've definitely had a big shift towards working closer with business functions and outcomes and profitability and P&Ls. I think we've also seen a bit of a shift from data. We're a very data-driven company, but I think we've also been underutilizing the data capacity that we have. And so we've been shifting, I think, a lot of the data skill set into product management as well, and bringing data a lot closer to product to make sure that we're using data to make as many data-driven decisions as we can.
Interesting. Maybe one trend I saw that I would like to see if anyone had experienced some of it is that as the budget constraints evolved and companies need to be, I would say, more focused on what they were doing, there was a bit of more top-down control on especially in the largest initiatives. So maybe I see you, Piet, kind of nodding. So have you seen some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel it's a good change. I've seen the company Cleverbridge over the last few years evolve from a customer-led company into a product-led company. But like you said, the key focus is on outcome, mainly revenue, and indeed the management controls the strategy. But at the same time, it also puts us product managers in control, and they're counting on us to really validate the stakeholders and the opportunities and what the sales input, and really validate what is the biggest revenue opportunity for the company. And they do put us in the leadership position. So I've seen it as a very positive change personally. But yes, of course, in the end, it is definitely with guidance from top level, absolutely.
Okay. So will you rate that as more empowerment or less empowerment in terms of having this top-down direction?
I would definitely say more empowered. The executives don't have the time. They operate on flight level. They don't have the time to really deep dive in all these topics. So they rely on us, at least with us they do, and I really appreciate that. Yes, of course, there's a sign-off, but in the end, it's usually a formality, and I feel like they trust the product teams, and I think we've also seen a positive change. At the same time, the product teams have been encouraged, stop thinking like a feature factory. Don't think about your output, think about your outcome. What do you want to achieve? So one thing that we've done is thinking of taking inspiration from companies like Amazon using a 6-paper approach, so a 6-pager. So everything has to be written down, you have to really align with all of your stakeholders, the sales team, go-to-market, product engineering, everyone has to basically be aligned. You, as product manager, are responsible for getting that alignment, a very big challenge. And then the final step is to go to your executives and then get that final sign-off.
Perfect. So I think it's aligned to the answers we heard before, like interacting more with other disciplines, being more aligned and more like, so it's empowerment as long as you are generating that buy-in to move forward. I see other notes in my original question. So any other perspective or any contrarian view?
Yeah, I could say something about it. So in Delivery Hero, what we're trying to do in every product feature that we do is at least have this, okay, what's the CapEx on it? You know, put a very tangible number in order for us to say, okay, let's go ahead and do it. So as you said, I do think in products, I mean, it depends business to business, right? But I think for sure we're taking a little bit less risks. We're taking more calculated risks now with a lot more user research, which we heard it from the previous speaker, and putting a very solid number on revenue and then be able to say, okay, let's go ahead and do it. But I do believe, even though, as you said, it's very top-down, there is a very strategic direction. There has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. Teams have to be empowered to have that bottom-up approach and know, okay, I'm going to do this, you know, because if not, they're just not going to be inspired, you know, so.
Yeah, interesting. So I guess that the positive side of that is that there is more focus on the initiatives that we take, so we reduce a bit of the noise. But maybe following on that thread, I would like to go a bit deeper, trying to understand how you feel the contribution of product was challenged, or what have to change in this landscape that we described in terms of what we are contributing as product managers. So maybe, Azucena, we can start with you. How have you seen this evolving in the
So, like the Airbnb example, yeah.
Exactly. The Airbnb
the
example,
one that
like Magic Eye also said it.
We can't name, yeah. No, I mean, everybody, I remember it came out and everybody's like, oh no, like product management is going to die. And it's not about that, right? It's about actually, there's a lot more pressure to be customer focused, really obsessed. And very similar to how we have technical product managers, we have to have, you know, customer product managers that are able even to replace, you know, kind of UX, right? So I always say, like, as a product manager, if your designer is out, your UX person is out, your tech person is out, like, you're there to cover, you know it end to end. Of course, some details you rely on the team, but this is how I think it has evolved, you know, that we do have like multiple hats, but we do have to be very obsessed on the customer side.
Okay, got it. One trend I'm noticing here is that all these companies are quite great. So maybe, Arne, I would like to take you from the journey of you knowing many product people since you are a conference organizer. So have you seen that this, for example, the trend of feature factories is slowing down or maybe growing in terms of how many companies are operating that way?
Well, I'm afraid there is a risk that we are falling back more into the feature factory. So like this tendency of more top-down control, I think can lead to that happening.
Thank you, Ross. So I see more companies challenged because also more decisions are induced by the CEO and even product leadership is circumvented, which is why also some product leaders have decided to change their jobs and so on. So I think I'm afraid we're tilting more towards feature factory.
Yeah, that was what I was afraid of, and I see that there is some great companies here that might not represent the rest of you on the audience. But maybe in that direction, the initial answers that you provided, all of you, tends in the direction of doing more discovery, or I felt like, hey, we will need to kind of research more before investing more. Do you feel that there is a higher bar for the evidence we need to gather before jumping into some big initiatives? Maybe, Kristen, you can take this one.
Yeah, so I think actually one of our big things is we've tried to move actually faster through discovery and just testing with users and like just get something live and shipping with way more frequent cadence and actually like we have maybe relied, so you can get insights from a lot of different places, like gathering data, doing qualitative user interviews. And I think now, like our shift has just been, let's learn faster and let's ship faster so we can get things in the hands of real users. And just like this experimentation, acceleration, I think has definitely been one of the things that we've been doing.
Got it. And maybe I saw a couple of notes there as well. So Piet, I would like to ask you, I know you are kind of also has strong UX background, so have you feel that this need to learn by shipping instead of maybe doing more deeper user research has changed the expectation and the role in these other disciplines like UX and user research?
Yes, absolutely. And I find that one of the biggest challenges is getting in front of your end user. We do e-commerce, my customers, or actually the companies using our platform, their customers are the end users, but those are actually my end users as well. They're the customers that I'm trying to convince to use the product and make a purchase. And that's very challenging for me, and I find it incredibly valuable and good to hear that some companies are achieving that. We're unfortunately still a bit more stuck in the what Azucena said. We put a number on everything, a lot of discovery, and then we measure the outcome, and we hope that our discovery was good and that we made the right choice. But I would be very interested in rotating more into like getting in front of my users as fast as possible and learning directly from them. I don't think there's anything more valuable as a product manager.
Yeah, interesting. And maybe to continue that trend, maybe Azucena, Delivery Hero operates in multiple markets and with multiple products. So how have you find this way of kind of learning together as an organization versus being more tactical on the different markets you operate?
Yeah, so we have something called cycle time on UX research and going live. Now it's very hard. Like you said, we have over 56 countries. What we do is we try to build a central product that works for everybody, but it kind of doesn't, because Argentina is very different to Taiwan. So what we do is, before we have something, let's say we're going to invest on fintech. What we do is we try to do a POC using a third-party tool, very easy. I'm not going to pitch for third-party tool, but let's say AppQs, where it's very cheap for us to actually validate if there is interest in a certain market, how would we actually want to develop it. And that way, again, we optimize the cycle time of user research in order for us to say, okay, we have a POC here, it works, let's go ahead and do it. And the second thing that's very important for us, at least as a global company, is we rely on regional expertise. So we have teams that centralize, that know the different countries, and then give us all the insights. So that's a little bit what we do.
That's interesting. So if I have to summarize what we said so far, is that the expectation is more on the outcome or the business impact that we said, and also that we are iterating faster, so the discovery is becoming more kind of in front of the user, let's put it that way. One trend that you mentioned that I have maybe thought for later, but now that you brought it up, tooling is also something that it's kind of changing deeply. So can any of you think about any example of tools in the last 2 years that you started to incorporate and that may have some change in not necessarily in the role, but maybe on how you are doing product management or your teams are doing it?
You mean ChatGPT?
That's good. That's a trend we need to follow as well.
Yeah, definitely AI. I think there's even tools out there that write your product development requests now with AI. So especially also market research is something that I incorporate with AI. I think it's not so much as replacing people's job, like people were maybe afraid of in the beginning when AI came out. I feel it more like supporting you in your current role. Anyone at any level of the company. I know our services teams are using it. Our product team is using it. I think it's valuable for a lot of people, and I think definitely AI has had the biggest impact on our tool set that we currently use.
Perfect. Beyond the kind of the typical use cases like writing the requirements, is there anything different in terms of, for example, in the application for discovery, or anything that you think in other companies you may have used? I know, Azucena, Kristen?
Yeah. I mean, we used to do a lot of in-house tooling, like say, okay, well, a CRM. Every country needs a CRM. Let's go ahead and build it. And we decided a year ago that we just cannot compete with like companies that do that. So we are integrating, we're moving away from that, like let's do everything in-house to rather have something a lot more hybrid and use third-party tools in order for us to get like quicker insights, something quick POC, and then do it natively on our side, So that's a little bit, and I agree with AI. Everything now is not only about, okay, like, hey, like I'm gonna, ChatGPT, could you just like get me an interview for this vendor and put all the, the brief there? No, it's also about like, we're using it a lot in order for us to provide better insights to vendors. We work a lot with restaurants. It's like, what do you have to do? We're going to give you all that data. So this is what we're doing, and also predicting.
I think from our side on the tooling, I think like the big changes is like moving towards A/B testing tooling. So a lot more investment there. And yeah, like the Optimizely's, the Statsigs of the world, like I think that's been a big shift, and like trying to get all the product managers to really understand the tools, understand how to use them, understand how experimentation can work at scale.
Got it, that makes sense. Richard, yeah.
Maybe one thought, since I can compare like having worked at a 2,000 people company and having worked at a 100 people company. At the 2,000 people company, we always had the tendency also to in-house or to build our stuff ourselves for the same reasons that you said. Like we thought we could do it better, and we wasted a lot of energy doing things. And now that I've been with a smaller company where we even, there was even no consideration to build an A/B testing tool or something like that, I could see, okay, how quickly you can actually get to results if you actually, use specialized software. Of course, you have to be mindful of the costs, but nevertheless, and also in terms of getting to results quickly, it's like if I would go back to a 2,000 people company, I would clearly push for not building everything ourselves, because I don't think it's worth it.
And how do you see the role of product maybe involved in that decision making? Because maybe, as you said, as a product manager, your tendency is, hey, I want to build this product because I can build it better than these other people. How do you see the consciousness, going back to the business impact that we mentioned before, this consciousness about the budget itself? How do you see that evolve? And I see Kristen nodding.
Yeah, I mean, we're going down like the CDP journey ourselves right now, where we had built a lot of things in-house, and now we're also trying to use other tooling. And I think as product managers, it's really, you need to be honest about like the cost that it's going to take to invest in it, because it might be simple to build something in-house and get a POC. But when you like actually need that to scale, like that's when it starts failing you, and you start to say, hey, this thing that we thought was going to be super quick is now 12 months of a roadmap, and there's a lot of cost around that. And so I think it's about being realistic about like what your expectations are and what your hope is for the tool or the thing you're trying to achieve, and then also realizing like the cost impact assessment and just trying to be really honest about that.
Yeah, I think as resources are more constrained, as we mentioned before, we need to be more conscious of the bets we can make, making these trade-offs of saying, hey, maybe this it's not core business, we can outsource it. That's a smart move.
Sorry that I'm always taking your microphone, but I think that is, you also initially asked about general shifts, and I think that is like being more mindful of the investments we are making as product people. I think this is something that has become more important, I feel, and investment could be in a software, investment could also be in the developers. Like how much development time do we really allocate for something? Like I still remember times like 10 years ago where it felt as if developers were growing on the trees, and it was more the question of, what do you do with them? But they were just there. And that's not the case anymore. Now you have to justify, like if you really want to dedicate 2 months of development time from an entire team on following a certain bet or not. And I think that's healthy, that we are challenged. We are product managers, so we should have some business capabilities. And I think that it's fair that we are being held accountable for the investments we make in various levels.
And maybe actually just thinking about that and coming back to like leadership, right? So one of the things our leadership has done is they like set the 3-year targets and the ambition level. And I think like with that as context, it actually does help you as a product person to say like, what are some of these things that are worth the investment? Because these are the things that are going to make us go to that extra 4x scale, 10x scale, whatever. And I think that's where leadership setting a good ambition, but then also empowering the teams to make the right trade-off decisions around how to get there.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And one extra question to that, maybe even in the enterprise context, might be even harder. How do you see the transparency of product managers knowing the level of investment they have? So kind of your team costs $500,000 per year. So are you aware of that? Have you seen any of that being kind of put into the balance or into the consideration that product managers need to have? Maybe Piet, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you think about, do we do it in-house or do we buy something, I think that already comes into play. You think the cost of building it in-house is your salaries of your engineers for the time that it takes to build it. It's a one-time cost, so after that it's basically pure profit, great. But if you then do external, great, you don't have that cost, you don't have to worry too much about salaries, but then you have that licensing cost on the other hand. And your job as product manager is, even if you have top-down guidance, you have to go to them and present them those two options and say, this is the most profitable number, at least, I think, for them to be able to make a good decision.
I love that, and maybe just a takeaway for everyone here, kind of knowing those numbers is not something that usually comes naturally, and something that we may need to start asking for. So it's a good takeaway. Maybe following on the trend of these investments and going back to our discovery topic that we just covered, how do you feel the risk appetite or this sort of willingness to innovate? That's maybe a big word, but have you seen that change in the last 2 years?
Yes, and it's because we're so much budget constrained. Like I said, yeah, the developers growing trees. I don't know. Like it just happened that there was a boom, and now it's quite noticeable that teams have shrank. We have to make really certain bets. But like I said, has it slowed down innovation? No, because at the end of the day, you still want to do really cool stuff, and that's why we do it based on POCs, right? So third-party tooling, and then make those decisions. But yeah, I do think we're now taking less risks. We had like a startup-y type in Delivery Hero, and now we're moving into, okay, we already know this works, this works, this works. This is where we're going to put the money in.
Okay, so definitely now. I see other nods, so maybe other opinions there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was mentioned at the previous panel, on one hand, yes, there is more budget constraints and everybody wants to be more cost efficient. On the other hand, with AI, there's this new opportunity to be innovative. Every company wants to be innovative. They want to be that company that releases this new AI feature first. There's a lot of hype. It was mentioned on the last panel. I completely agree with this. I think this is an opportunity for us as product leaders to convince our top level and say, look, this is an opportunity to invest. And from what I've seen there, if you have the right discovery, if you have the right numbers to present to them, they can be convinced and they are still willing to invest. But the research that it takes to convince them is just increased a lot more.
Yeah, I would say that especially in larger companies, I feel that the difficult market has rather triggered a new type of innovation muscle that maybe the larger companies had forgotten about because they didn't need it. They were in a comfortable zone and things were growing nicely, and yes, maybe they needed to make up some good stories for the market, but like in the product teams, maybe there was less of an innovation muscle. And I think now that since the teams have shrunk and we need to be very mindful of what we do, I think this is also helping people train their innovation muscle and also be very conscious about how can you really cheaply and quickly de-risk and find out what's working and what's not, instead of building massive MVPs which don't really justify the name and so. So I think it's a good tendency.
I like it, and if I have a takeaway from what all you said is, so there is a willingness to invest and take risk. And there is the financial capability to doing so, but we need to present more research, and we need to kind of generate this muscle of testing more things in order to find the right opportunities. So, Kristen, any thought on that?
Yeah, so I guess I think that like experimentation has made us braver because we can take risks with a smaller group of users and say like, it's okay to fail, right? So be braver, be bolder in your experimentation. And then I think in terms of like taking bigger risks, like I think we've been trying to be way more strategic around like what we want to be differentiated on. And in those areas, like, called out a few specific things where we're going to say like, we're willing to go slower on these to like try to be more innovative, to make sure that we're like trying to really be differentiated, that we're like getting, checking all the boxes to make sure that like this is the bet in the way we want to take it. So yeah, I think it's like a kind of a bit of a dichotomy for us, for like picking certain things that we really want to go deep on, and then others just saying, be brave and fail.
One interesting side thought, and I'm not trying to get too philosophical here, but all the things we have mentioned kind of changing in the last 2 years, of course, we're triggered by business constraints, but when you look at them, they seem quite logical. It seems like things we should have been doing for many years. So, again, not getting too philosophical, why do you think this might have been the case that we haven't that focused in the past?
Because it was convenient not to do so.
Interesting.
Well, I think most of us in tech companies, we were in a very luxurious position a couple of years ago. And I think that didn't really well, maybe always bring out the best of us. And I think now, being a bit more mindful of how we use the capacities that we have, I think this is we can take that as a positive challenge. I don't want to romanticize, and there are also a lot of bad things about it, and a lot of great people losing their jobs and so. So I don't want to say everything is great, but just still, I think we were maybe getting a bit too lazy before in the pure growth times.
I think also the competition has increased. So like Arne said, we were in a luxurious position. I think that's because maybe there were less companies doing the same thing, or the market was less established. You had less big players that were not monopolizing the business. I think now for most medium, smaller sized companies, it's incredibly difficult to stand out from a product perspective, which means that you can't just try out an idea. It has to be very well calculated. You need to be convinced that it's going to be successful and help you stand out. And it's easier to be overshadowed by those big companies when they do something similar. So yeah, we have to just be more calculated and less luxurious. Yeah.
Got it. And maybe on deep dive on that, how do you see the role of product managers evolving in terms of finding these differentiations? Because when we spoke about strategy in the talk before, so do you see that the product managers need to be more conscious of building this defendable position when doing their products?
Yeah, I could take it. What's most important, and I tell every products manager, is that you're obsessed. And I oversay it, but like just obsessed. And I work in food delivery, right? So I'm always ordering, but not only ordering. When I go to a restaurant, I'm looking there. What are they doing? Then I'm looking at the Uber Eats people and stuff like that. So as long as you're obsessed, and then it's not only about the competition, yeah? You have to think about, okay, well, how does the restaurant work? You look at it and, okay, what is something applicable to restaurant? Is it Amazon? So again, looking at a 360 of how things work gets you that differentiation. While before we were like, oh no, DoorDash just did something, let's just copy it out. No, it just doesn't work anymore, because like now we have to innovate and we have to take risks, but calculated, so you have to find that balance. So, and the only way to do it, I see it, is just you're super obsessed. And I have to acknowledge the best ideas that we've ever had in Delivery Hero, like super money making, come from the teams, like always. It hasn't been like, oh, we just copied it from someone else. It's always the team. So, yeah.
I call it curiosity, just to make it a bit less stressful, but I like the points. And I think, again, goes back into the direction of what we were hearing before, that the impact that teams can still have in a strategy, even when we have this context in which maybe the bets are a bit more constrained and there is a kind of more top-down direction on what we want to do, but then the ideas are still coming from the teams. Excellent. So I want to shift a bit more onto recommendations, but maybe for the audience here now, hearing that there are sort of changes and some trends going on, how do you feel that we can prepare as product managers for these challenges that are coming kind of now or in the last 2 years, like focusing on business impacts, the budget constraints that we mentioned, buy versus build, so all these decisions that we have been discussing, how do you think we can prepare to kind of be ahead of the curve?
I guess from my side, I would just say, like, grow your skills horizontally, right? Like, if you're not super strong on business cases and knowing the numbers, like, go deeper there. If your team is maybe lacking user research, like, lean into understanding that yourself. And if you need more data resources, like, teach yourself SQL, just be willing to grow your skill set horizontally to also be able to step into these different gaps and be comfortable no matter kind of what the need is within your team.
Yeah, I completely agree. At the same time, I made the mistake when I started coming from more of a technical background when I went into product, of often telling my team what to do. And I've noticed that in the years after that, as I stepped more backwards and gave my team more ownership of empowered to make decisions and make recommendations, you're often very positively surprised at what they can come up with. So I would definitely say give always your team the room to bring something to the table, even if you yourself have a basic skill set of all these things that were mentioned. But I agree, it's very important that you have that basic skill set. I think it was mentioned earlier as well. If your designer is out on vacation, if your technical person is not there, you're their backup. You're the one that knows it. I completely agree with that. I would also say as a recommendation, like what you asked, I think it's a very difficult challenge. Like, how can you as a product manager be like the innovator in the space? It's a very, very tough challenge that most of us will never achieve. I think what we can do on the level where we're currently at is find a mentor. I think product manager is a role. Yes, you can read a lot of articles and books, but you learn most by doing, in my opinion. And I've personally learned most by working with people that are better than me and great product minds. So I would say try to find yourself a mentor in your company. In a startup, that could be your CTO, your CEO. They might be great product-minded people. In a large enterprise company, it's a little bit easier to find. You'll probably find a senior product manager or someone who can guide you. So I would say try to find someone like that and just soak a lot of their knowledge, just observe them and learn from them. Yeah.
And maybe one side note to that I think it's quite interesting is because we think about let's learn from other product people, but for example in this business impact and business case that we're mentioning, there may be a financial person who may teach you a lot. So it's interesting to find mentors in kind of different skill sets.
Yeah, I think as a recommendation, I would use the title of our panel actually. I mean, take uncertainty as an opportunity for you, because I mean, in times of uncertainty, the whole organization tends to run around a little bit like wild chickens, and nobody really knows what to do. And I think a lot of the basic things that we learn as product managers about experimentation and so forth can be really helpful to help the whole organization de-risk certain things. And so I think you can have a big influence in bringing what you do on a day-to-day basis anyways, bringing that to help your whole organization. I think the tricky thing about that is not to talk about product frameworks because nobody cares. So you still have to get out of your silo and put yourself in the shoes of your sales and customer success people and try to say things in their language so that they appreciate what you bring to them. But I think there's a great opportunity for us to help beyond the product role.
So I see more apply the product thinking, not necessarily the framework, but the thinking. So maybe to continue on this recommendation thread, who in the audience are product leaders? Some sorts, okay, many of them. So maybe we can think about this question as recommendations. What can product leaders do for product teams to get them at this level of commitment or challenges? But maybe in the audience, if you are an individual contributor, you can think about what you can ask from your leader to improve and to stay ahead of the curve. So I know you all are product leaders, so maybe some ideas on what we are doing to kind of level up your product managers and keep them at the level of challenge we are seeing now.
Could go. Yeah, so I'm going to compare it with sports, okay? What I try to do and what I try to tell all my team as well is, you have the NFL draft, you always choose the best people. So you surround yourself with really smart people, and those smart people will help you grow, will also help you, provide that value of product and everything. And the second thing that I think is very important is also, that we give teams challenges. So I never go with, I'm just thinking like a really cool idea. Right now it's like, oh, hey, this is the challenge, find a solution, and that way you empower them. They're always like kind of thinking, and that's what I believe is important.
Perfect. Kristen, as you noted before?
Yeah, I guess I would just also say, make sure every team has the right, North Star metric, right? So make sure that the team knows that what they're optimizing for and what success really looks like for them, and then empower them to come up with the solutions, right? So I think at the end of the day, you need to be super careful to not get into the output trap and just make sure that the outcomes are really what you're trying to deliver for. And so ultimately, I think setting the super clear, this is what success looks like, this is the outcome that really matters, and then empowering the teams to go after it.
Got it. Yeah, please.
I raised my hand, going back to empowerment, I raised my hand, even though actually nobody reports directly into me, and I'm not a people manager at the company, but my chief product owner, who's also my mentor, he always tells me, you are a product leader. He expects me to be a product leader. And they say, you are leading without authority. So I want to say to the people here who are not people managers, you can also still be a product leader. You can lead without authority. Your job is to get people on board by just getting them excited about your idea and your vision, and prepare enough, motivation of why your vision is the right one. And if you can get people on board that way, it's really powerful because you get everybody together on one team without authority. That's also a powerful move, I think.
I love it. I love it. And I think goes back to what we discussed at the very beginning about kind of involving more areas, the challenge of we need to involve more areas in our way of working, and that as individual contributors we can definitely do.
Yeah, maybe one other note, what you can expect from your leaders or what we as leaders can do is, I mean, if we want to make use of fast learning through experimentation, we also have to create a culture where that is okay. And this means that also failure needs to be treated in the right way so that people are also, dare taking risks, doing experiments and know that they will not be punished if the experiment does not turn out as expected. The important thing is that they learn quickly, and so as long as you can applaud saying, hey, great that we found out so quickly that this doesn't work, this is much better than saying, but this was my pet idea, why didn't you get it to make it work? Like, if you do something like that, then you kill everything in terms of experimentation culture, because then everybody will be afraid and only the safe bets will be done, and that's not good, I think, in this uncertainty that we have right now.
Yeah, I love it. I think that goes back in the direction of what we said about being conscious about the budget investment, because you may have an idea that will take months to build. It's in the roadmap, sitting in the roadmap takes months to build, but you can still do a quick experiment and see if this is still worth doing. One final topic in the recommendation line that I was hoping it pop up before, but it didn't, is around product operations. So how have you feel that product operations have changed the role, and maybe some recommendation for, especially in larger companies that may have this role? How have you seen the product managers interacting with that, and how can product managers nowadays be or take advantage of this new role?
Yeah, I guess in our world, like product operations is amazing in helping us to just like create processes and create opportunities for us to like accelerate by helping to create better alignment, create better processes, also to take a lot of, in our case, like a lot of the program management out of the product management role. And so I think it allows actually our product managers to really focus on the customer problems and focus a lot more on what our user needs are, rather than kind of like operational efficiencies within our company.
So maybe one last question, since we have a couple of minutes. How have you seen, we discussed about AI, and Peter, you mentioned this about kind of how fast we can go maybe with the different things that we can leverage AI for. How have you seen, and maybe some recommendations for the amount of maybe engineer power a product manager can now manage with the use of these tools? So have you seen a change in the ratio, and maybe some recommendation on how this may impact our daily work?
I would say that if the expectations were the same as they used to be, you could say we could do more, but I think because the expectations are rising, we have to use AI to just keep up with the expectations, and it doesn't necessarily leave room to do more than before. It's just because the bar is that much higher, we have to be that much more efficient, and this is where I would say AI comes in.
Love it. Very good point.
You have to, that means that you're more focused on strategy, value creation, so that's what, it's not. Exactly, I agree with the bar is a lot higher, so you focus more on value generation rather than kind of the little things that took a lot of time, like creating slides, creating briefs, and all this,
Okay, if there are no more thoughts to that question, we don't have time to start a new one. So I hope you all get some ideas on how the bar has risen, as we just spoke, and some of the trends that you might need to follow to stay ahead of the curve. Thank you so much.